Day 169 of the chronological Bible in a year. Take a breath and take a moment to celebrate that you have set this time aside to hear God's word. Let's begin in 2 Kings chapter 11. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and eliminated all the royal children. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and abducted him from among the king's sons who were being put to death, and put him and his nurse in the bedroom. So they hid him from Athaliah, and he was not put to death. So he was kept hidden with her in the house for the Lord for 6 years, while Athaliah was reigning over the land. 2 Chronicles 22, starting at verse 10. Now, when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she rose and eliminated all the royal children of the house of Judah. But Jehosheba, the king's daughter, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from among the king's sons who were being put to death, and placed him and his nurse in the bedroom. So Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram, the wife of Jehoida the priest, for she was the sister of Ahaziah, hid him from Athaliah so that she would not put him to death. He kept himself hidden with them in the house of God for 6 years, while Athaliah reigned over the land. 2 Kings 11, starting at verse 4. Now in the 7th year, Jehoiada sent orders and brought the captains of hundreds of the Carites and of the guards, and brought them to himself at the house of the Lord. Then he made a covenant with them, and put them under oath at the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's son. And he commanded them, saying, "This is the thing that you shall do. A third of you who came in on the Sabbath, and a third of you who come in on the Sabbath and keep watch over the king's house, a third also shall be at the gate, sir, and a third at the gate behind the guards, shall keep watch over the house for defense. And 2 parts of you, all who go out on the Sabbath, shall also keep watch over the house of the Lord for the king. Then you shall surround the king, each with his weapons in his hand. And whoever comes with the ranks shall be put to death. And you are to be with the king when he goes out and when he comes in." So the captains of hundreds acted in accordance with everything that Jehoiada the priest commanded, and each one of them took his men who were to come in on the Sabbath, along with those who were to go out on the Sabbath, and they came to Jehoiada the priest. Then the priest gave the captains of hundreds the spears and shields that had been King David's, which were found in the house of the Lord. The guards stood, each with his weapons in his hand, from the right side of the house to the left side of the house, by the altar and by the house around the king. Then he brought the king's son out and put the crown on him and gave him the testimony, and they made him king and anointed him, and they clapped their hands and said, "Long live the king." Second Chronicles chapter 23. Now in the 7th year, Jehoiada gathered his courage and took captains of hundreds, Ahaziah the son of Jehoram, Ishmael the son of Johanan, Azariah the son of Obed, Messiah the son of Adaiah, and Elishaphat the son of Zitri, and they entered into a covenant with him. And they went throughout Judah and gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah, and the heads of the fathers' households of Israel, and they came to Jerusalem. Then the assembly made a covenant with the king in the house of God. And Jehoiada said to them, "Behold, the king's son shall reign, as the Lord has spoken concerning the sons of David. This is the thing which you shall do. A third of you, of the priests and Levites who come in on the Sabbath, shall be gatekeepers, and a third shall be at the king's house, and a third at the gate of the foundation. And all the people shall be in the courtyards of the house of the Lord. But no one is to enter the house of the Lord except the priests and the ministering Levites. They may enter, for they are holy. And all the people are to keep the command of the Lord. The Levites will surround the king, each man with his weapons in his hand, and whoever enters the house is to be put to death. Therefore, be with the king when he comes in and when he goes out. The Levites and all Judah did according to what Jehoiada the priest commanded. And each one of them took his men who were to come in on the Sabbath, and those who were to go out on the Sabbath, for Jehoiada the priest did not dismiss any of the divisions. Then Jehoiada the priest gave the captains of hundreds the spears and the shields and quivers, which had been King David's, which were in the house of God. He stationed all the people, each man with his weapon in his hand, from the right side of the house to the left side of the house, by the altar and by the house around the king. Then they brought out the king's son and put the crown on him and gave him the testimony and made him king. And Jehoiada and his sons anointed him and said, "Long live the king." 2 Kings 11, starting at verse 13. When Athaliah heard the noise of the guards and of the people, she came to the people at the house of the Lord. And she looked, and behold, the king was standing by the pillar according to the custom, with the captains and the trumpeters beside the king. And all the people of the land were joyful and blowing trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her clothes and cried out, "Conspiracy, conspiracy!" And Jehoiada the priest commanded the captains of hundreds who were appointed over the army and said to them, "Bring her out between the ranks, and whoever follows her put to death with the sword." For the priest said, "She is not to be put to death at the house of the Lord." So they seized her, and when they brought her to the horses' entrance of the king's gate, she was put to death there. 2 Chronicles 23, starting at verse 12. When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and praising the king, she went into the house of the Lord to the people. She looked, and behold, the king was standing by his pillar at the entrance, and the captains and the trumpeters were beside the king. And all the people of the land rejoiced and blew trumpets, the singers with their musical instruments leading the praise. Then Athaliah tore her clothes and said, "Conspiracy, conspiracy!" And Jehoiada the priest brought out the captains of hundreds who were appointed over the army and said to them, "Bring her out between the ranks, and whoever follows her is to be put to death with the sword." For the priest said, "You shall not put her to death in the house of the Lord." So they seized her, and when she arrived at the entrance of the horse gate of the king's house, they put her to death there. 2 Kings 11, starting at verse 17. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord, the king, and the people, that they would be the Lord's people, and between the king and the people. And all the people of the land came to the house of Baal and tore it down. They thoroughly smashed his altars and his images in pieces, and they killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. Then the priest appointed sentries over the house of the Lord. And he took the captains of hundreds and the Carites and the guards and all the people of the land, and they brought the king down from the house of the Lord and came by the way of the gate of the guards to the king's house. And he sat on the throne of the kings. So all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was peaceful. For they had put Athaliah to death with the sword at the king's house. Jehoash was 7 years old when he became king. 2 Chronicles 23, starting at verse 16. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between himself and all the people and the king, that they would be the Lord's people. And the people went to the house of Baal and tore it down, and they broke in pieces his altars and his images, and killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. Moreover, Jehoiada Place the offices of the house of the Lord under the authority of the Levitical priests, whom David had assigned over the house of the Lord, to offer the burnt offerings of the Lord, as it is written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and singing, according to the order of David. He stationed the gatekeepers of the house of the Lord, so that no one would enter who was in any way unclean. He took the captains of hundreds, the nobles, the rulers of the people, and all the people of the land, and brought the king down from the house of the Lord, and went through the upper gate to the king's house. And they seated the king upon the royal throne. So all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was at rest, for they had put Athaliah to death with the sword. 2 Kings chapter 12. In the 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash became king, and he reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. Jehoash did what was right in the sight of the Lord all his days that Jehoida the priest instructed him. Only the high places did not end. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. Then Jehoash said to the priests, all the money of the sacred offerings which is brought into the house of the Lord in current money, both the money of each man's assessment and all the money which anyone's heart prompts him to bring into the house of the Lord, the priests are to take it for themselves, each from his acquaintance, and they shall repair damage to the house wherever any damage is found. But it came about that in the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not repaired any damage to the house. So King Jehoash summoned Jehoiada the priest and the other priests and said to them, why do you not repair damage to the house? Now then, you are not to take any more money from your acquaintances, but give it up for the damage to the house. The priests then agreed that they would not take any more money from the people, nor would they repair damage to the house. Instead, Jehoiada the priest took a chest and drilled a hole in its lid and put it beside the altar on the right side as one comes into the house of the Lord. And the priests who guarded the threshold put in it all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. When they saw that there was a great amount of money in the chest, the king's scribe and the high priest went up and tied it up in bags and counted the money that was found in the house of the Lord. And they handed the money which was assessed over to those who did the work and had the oversight of the house of the Lord. And they paid it out to the carpenters and the builders who worked on the house of the Lord, and to the masons and to the stone cutters, and for buying timber and cut stone to repair the damage to the house of the Lord, and for everything that was laid out for the house to repair it. However, there were not made for the house of the Lord silver cups, shears, bowls, trumpets, any receptacles of gold, or receptacles of silver from the money which was brought into the house of the Lord, for they gave that to those who did the work, and with it they repaired the house of the Lord. Moreover, they did not require an accounting from the men into whose hands they gave the money to pay those who did the work, because they acted faithfully. The money from the guilt offerings and the money from the sin offerings was not brought into the house of the Lord. It belonged to the priests. 2 Chronicles chapter 24. Joash was 7 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zibiah from Beersheba. Joash did what was right in the sight of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada took 2 wives for him, and he fathered sons and daughters. Now it came about after this that Joash decided to restore the house of the Lord. He gathered the priests and the Levites and said to them, go out to the cities of Judah and collect money from all Israel to repair the house of your God annually, and you shall do the work quickly. But the Levites did not act quickly. So the king summoned Jehoiada, the chief priest, and said to him, why have you not required the Levites to bring in from Judah and from Jerusalem the contribution of Moses the servant of the Lord, and the congregation of Israel for the tent of testimony. For the sons of the wicked Athaliah had broken into the house of God, and even used holy things of the house of the Lord for the Baals. So the king commanded, and they made a chest and set it outside by the gate of the house of the Lord. And they made a proclamation in Judah and Jerusalem to bring to the Lord the contribution commanded by Moses, the servant of God, on Israel in the wilderness. All the officers and all the people rejoiced, and they brought in their contribution and dropped it into the chest until they had finished. It happened that whenever the chest was brought to the king's officer by the Levites, and they saw that the money was substantial, the king's scribes and the chief priest's officer would come and empty the chest and pick it up again and return it to its place. They did this daily and collected a large amount of money. The king and Jehoiada gave it to those who did the work of the service of the house of the Lord, and they hired masons and carpenters to restore the house of the Lord, and also workers in iron and bronze to repair the house of the Lord. So the workmen labored, and the repair work progressed in their hands, and they restored the house of God according to its specifications and strengthened it. When they had finished, they brought the rest of the money before the king and Jehoiada, and it was made into utensils for the house of the Lord, utensils for the service and the burnt offerings, and pans and utensils of gold and silver. And they offered burnt offerings in the house of the Lord continually all the days of Jehoiada. Now Jehoiada reached a good old age, and he died. He was 130 years old at his death. And they buried him in the city of David with the kings, because he had done well in Israel and for God and his house. But after the death of Jehoiada, the officials of Judah came and bowed down to the king, and the king listened to them. And they abandoned the house of the Lord, the God of their fathers, and served the Asherim and the idols. So wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for this guilt of theirs. And he sent prophets to them to bring them back to the Lord, and they testified against them, but they would not listen. Then the Spirit of God covered Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada the priest, like clothing, and he stood above the people and said to them, "This is what God has said. Why did you break the commandments of the Lord and do not prosper? Because you have abandoned the Lord, he has also abandoned you." So they conspired against him, and at the command of the king, they stoned him to death in the courtyard of the house of the Lord. So Joash the king did not remember the kindness which Zechariah's father Jehoiada had shown him, but he murdered his son. And as Zechariah died, he said, "May the Lord see and avenge." 2 Kings 10, starting at verse 32. In those days, the Lord began to cut off pieces from Israel, and Hazael defeated them through the territory of Israel, from the Jordan eastward, all the land of Gilead, the Gadites, the Reubenites, and the Manassites, from Aroer, which is by the valley of Arnon, that is, Gilead and Bashan. Now, as for the rest of the acts of Jehu and everything that he did and all his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehu lay down with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And his son Jehoahaz became king in his place. So the time when Jehu reigned over Israel in Samaria was 28 years. Thank you for listening. I pray that the seed of God's word will be planted in your heart and will continue to grow.